Hi, everybody. It's Megan Thompson from Megan Thompson Coaching, and today we're going to talk all about the lowdown on diagnoses, personality, and what the difference is and what's normal for a highly sensitive child. Normal, obviously, in quotes. Um, and so to first start off, introduce myself, I'm Megan Thompson with Megan Thompson Coaching, and I've been working in the mental health field as a licensed clinical professional counselor for almost 10 years. Obviously, I'm not your therapist, your kid's therapist through the internet, but I've opened up this business to help explain and support for parents the needs, the specific needs that highly sensitive kids have, and then also to provide direct support for people who work with me directly in the online space. So to help you understand a little bit more about what makes me qualified to answer that question, I've been working with highly sensitive kids as a therapist for in some way, shape, or form since I was in grad school. About that was 10 years ago, actually. And so throughout my experience with that, I've been able to learn how to differentiate between what's highly sensitive and what's a different mental health diagnosis or mental health disorder. So I wanted to help you understand first the definition of a personality versus a disorder. So personality is part of one person's presentation of themselves to the outside world. So to use myself as an example, I am blunt. I am straightforward. I am to the point. I am not afraid to tell people what I think. And I'm also friendly and have some tact. So that would become a disorder if I did not have the ability to read other people's faces when I was blunt, and take in the environment and level my personality to match other people's needs and demonstrate empathy towards another person and manage my personality to what people can take from that. That's when it would border into the need for significant professional help or professional help to help me manage those social skills. So basically, I advise parents when they're trying to figure out whether their child's highly sensitive personality needs professional help is to manage the components of that personality is recognizing whether or not your child is able to function in society effectively. So are they able to go to school? Are they able to do their job, which is to play? Are they able to experience life with a general ease, or at least preparation for that ease in an effective way, as long as you're keeping up with their basic needs and their emotional needs? And if you need help and support for that, then that's when you would reach out to a professional or somebody who can provide more guidance. So I want to get more specific in that respect by first identifying the 4 components of the highly sensitive personality, and then next going into specific diagnoses that sometimes parents come across when they're trying to figure out what's up with their kiddo, what makes them different than their other children or their same-aged peers. And so the first part is identifying the 4 components of a highly sensitive personality. And the first is depth of processing. And these 4 components were not developed by me. They were developed by Elaine Aron, who sparked the research back in the 90s. Dr. Elaine Aron. And so the depth of processing is having deep thought process and understanding of how the world works, and really focusing on multiple layers of understanding a certain situation. So your child is really picking apart and very detail oriented in their taking in of information from the world. So they're having a prolific imagination. They have a very wide range of solutions to problems, which makes it difficult for them to come to some conclusion or solve some problems. So that's a couple examples of the depth of processing. It also takes them a long time to really let things sink in and take in new information because of that. Because their brain, if we look at the brain scans of highly sensitive people, is using more brain power. The next piece, and I'm trying not to get too psychological for you, stay more on parents' layman's terms. The next piece is easily overstimulated. So kids are easily overstimulated because if your brain's taking in lots of information, then of course you're going to be overwhelmed more regularly. And that part leads to an increase of emotional responses like meltdowns and anger and also deeper feelings as well, which is the third component. So highly sensitive kids have big feelings. That's the piece where parents are trying to figure out, is my kid normal? This is the one part of the personality where parents are perceiving their child to quote unquote have bipolar. So highly sensitive kids, it's normal for a child to feel disappointed if they're not getting what they want when they want it. We all do. As adults, we all feel disappointed when we don't get what we want when we want it. And so it's normal for a child to respond verbally versus just keeping it in. It's also normal for a child to keep it in and hide that emotion from adults because they don't have the language to communicate that. They communicate that more effectively through play. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So with that said, the grand scale from which your child expresses that emotion, that is what is relevant to highly sensitive. So the fact that your child is disappointed, that's like a level playing field. All people feel disappointed when they don't get what they want. And your child's expression of that disappointment is at another level. And that's what the piece of what's highly sensitive. The meltdown that after being disappointed is an example of what's typical for highly sensitive kids when parents don't have strategies to eliminate those daily meltdowns. So when you're trying to figure out, oh, my kid can turn it on, turn it off at the drop of a hat, and, sometimes parents can come to me, is my kid bipolar? Because it seems like Jekyll and Hyde. I want to help you understand the definition of bipolar disorder and why that's different from highly sensitive personality. The first part is recognizing that being highly sensitive is the four components have to be present. And for children and adolescents and adults with bipolar disorder, they are not thinking things deeply. They don't have that part of the personality unless they both meet the criteria for highly sensitive and bipolar disorder. They're not easily overstimulated by outside situations. That's not part of bipolar disorder. As a component that is true for all highly sensitive people. And then more empathy and more emotional reactivity, the empathy piece in terms of noticing and picking up on other people's feelings, that is true for highly sensitive people, but is not always true for people with bipolar disorder. So you can have a blunt personality like myself and have a mental health disorder. You can have a sensitive personality and have a mental health disorder. So it's different in that respect. And it's the reason why you're confused oftentimes because they can overlap at times. And it's also true that if you're not working with a skilled professional, you could be fed misinformation. And the professional could be using the wrong strategies, and that's what's leading to ineffective results for your family. The last part of the personality trait for highly sensitive kids or for highly sensitive people is sensitive to subtleties. And that's the noticing of very small details, a detail oriented to the max. Picking up on a subtle twitch of the eyebrow in terms of facial expressions. And that's not typical or a part of the diagnosis for bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder, to kind of break it down into basic terms, is more, it's a cyclical mood disorder. So what that means is that there's some semblance of a pattern of these episodes of mania and depression. Mania, the first part, is consists of some level of high self-esteem or an overexerting expectation of one's abilities, which is not true for highly sensitive kids. A lot of highly sensitive kids are hesitant about their abilities or struggle with their abilities, and they really have a low self-esteem because of the shame that they experience more regularly. And so that's one way to see and to talk about that with professionals who are working with your family. Another piece for bipolar disorder is that in terms of meeting manic, the manic part of the bipolar disorder is a lack of sleep, but little need for it. So high energy rather than the crankiness that you see if your child, highly sensitive kid, doesn't have sleep. Increased rate of speech, so kind of like na 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 na, talking super fast, as well as having lots of ideas that don't seem to match. Whereas if you're trying to, obviously you're not going to diagnose your kid, but the difference that I notice for highly sensitive kids is that they might have lots of ideas, but they follow a path. They are very, the depth of processing, the big imagination, it has lots of details, but they're relevant to each other. Whereas someone in a manic episode is having like stuff that's coming out of left field in this, either the story or the conversation that they're trying to have with you, and you're left being like, what are you talking about? Not blown away by the extent of their emotion, which is what you're usually feeling when your child has a meltdown for something that seems irrelevant. I'm trying to think of other things that would be key tenets of bipolar disorder that would be important for you to pay attention to and seek professional help if you feel like your child is meeting those criteria. The next piece is high risk taking that is not the same for highly sensitive kids. So somebody who has bipolar disorder could present with taking risks that are beyond their ability. So having this grand sense of capacity to reach whatever goal they have. And so this in adults looks like somebody, to the extreme, like thinking they could fly or spending a ton of money and being like, I will have the money, it'll be in my account tomorrow. And so it's really important to work with a skilled professional because fantastical ideas are true for all children, but pacing that together and managing the difference is really important. And the connection to reality is the difference, that a highly sensitive child can have a big fantastical imagination, but when you talk to them about what is true or what can happen, they are able to manage that when you're in a calm environment and talking to them about possibilities rather than this pressured capacity to think that everything amazing will happen and they are able to do it all at once. And then the second piece, so we went over some components of what mania might look like. And then the other component is depression. And so somebody who has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder might also have experiences of significant depression. And so that's increased decreased appetite, decreased energy, sense of worthlessness and guilt, trouble concentrating, and suicidal thoughts. So those not all at once, but those are the big tenets. And so for children, depression in children shows up as irritability and sense of worthlessness and hopelessness and feelings of wanting to die and feelings of not wanting to live anymore and taking action on that sometimes as well. So it's important to note the extreme sense of shame for your child. Highly sensitive kids and highly sensitive people are more likely to feel shame, and that sometimes can mean that they feel like they are a bad kid. And if it's getting to the point where they feel like they shouldn't be living anymore, or that they shouldn't be on this earth, or they're saying things like that, then I definitely recommend seeking professional help. Your child should not have to live like that, and neither should you have to carry that burden, and it's freaking scary for both you and your child. So I would definitely recommend seeking professional help, whether that be through a parent coach or through a local mental health provider. The next piece is identifying another mental health disorder that I hear from parents about, and unskilled clinicians perceiving the rigidity in a highly sensitive personality and the the meltdowns as something that is close to high functioning autism. So for the biggest difference between being highly sensitive and being having an autism spectrum disorder or being on the spectrum is that people with autism at the core of their brain function don't understand that communication can get their needs met. So the difference between that and highly sensitive is that highly sensitive people feel and think that they are communicating on some level and that their needs are being met via their means of communication. Their means of communication might be a very subtle raise of the eyebrow because they are sensitive to subtleties, or an extreme emotion because they feel like they have not been heard when they've shared with you their emotions on just a regular vocal level like I'm talking right now, because they've been dismissed or told not to worry, or their parents have tried to fix their problems for them. So they go to the extreme of the emotion, and that's a behavioral response, not a brain disorder that has led to that meltdown level. So that's the biggest one for the difference between autism spectrum disorder and a highly sensitive personality trait. The next one is sensory processing disorder. So there is some newer research coming out that says about 50% of people with highly sensitive personality trait also have sensory processing disorder. There's a lot of overlap. And one of the biggest things that I have to say in terms of the difference between highly sensitive personality trait and sensory processing disorder is that when your brain has sensory processing disorder, your brain is confused by the information coming into it and by the environment around it, and cannot work through that level of confusion in order to make sense of it and move on. So if a child puts on an itchy tag, like a t-shirt with an itchy tag, a kiddo with sensory processing disorder, with a tactile sensitivity, so that's touch sensitivity, their brain would be surprised and confused by that itchy tag and not able to make sense of it, leading to a meltdown, freaking out with the itchy tag and just refusing to put it on, refusing to even look at it if you're trying to get them to wear it, refusing to even get dressed beyond that because they are just in a complete meltdown, overwhelmed state. Someone who's highly sensitive and that's part of their personality, they might also have touch sensitivity because that's one sensitive to the subtlety part of their personality. Not all kids are touch sensitive or physical sensation sensitive. They might just be sensitive to details and noticing things in their environment. And for them, they can say, this is hard, I don't like it, but I like the t-shirt, so I'm going to wear it. Or can work with you to cut it out and tell you in a calm environment that they need to have it cut out. So it's a different level of being able to push through that sensitivity in a calm environment, whereas a person with sensory processing disorder, their brain can't function in a way that moves through that. So the difference in treatment is that an occupational therapist would work with the child in the office, agitating the brain, purposefully, like poking the bear, and getting the brain to retrain itself to calm down the nervous system and the physical sensations when experiencing that frustration. Whereas the highly sensitive child already has that ability, but is overwhelmed by the environment. And that's what makes it different, where like one day they can manage a tag and the other day they can't. So the next one I wanted to go over, and lastly, is anxiety. So highly sensitive people have an overactive part of their brain that's the amygdala. And in their brain, that part of the brain is the activated fight or flight response. So your child, if they're highly sensitive, could present with lots of anxiety because their brain is telling them that they are in danger or unsafe more regularly. And without without the ability to learn how to prevent some of those environments that make them feel unsafe, learn how to decrease their anxiety throughout the day, or without how to respond to them effectively in a way that acknowledges anything that makes them feel anxious. That's what leads to the meltdowns for highly sensitive kids. And that's one of the big things that I work with parents on is really eliminating those daily meltdowns as a result of the anxiety. And that's something you can do without a therapist, or your kiddo could come to a therapist as well and work on that, build their skills and self-esteem working with a therapist locally as well. So I hope that helps you understand the difference between the big ones that come across my desk, the big questions that parents are asking about either in my private practice or when I work with parents through the coaching business online. And really helping you understand that it is super important to work with a skilled professional who knows the difference between these, because it can really set you up for an unsuccessful go-around with trying to manage learning skills that might not be indicated for your child's needs. And so I wanted to take some time to answer questions. I know some of you are watching, and I've been kind of yammering on for a while because it's lots of info for you to take in, but also because I'm really passionate about the difference in helping parents understand. So if your child is highly sensitive, that you're not making them feel like they're broken, or feeling like your kiddo is broken in that respect. So I wanted to just kind of check in on questions here. So let me see if anybody's popping in, asking things. Hi, Kim. Nice to see you, Zoe. I'm going to wait a second, take a drink of water. I hope it goes without saying that I'm, like I said before, like I'm not diagnosing your kid through the internet, but and it's really important for you to work with that skilled professional. It doesn't look like I'm seeing any questions yet, but I hope that this helps you get clear on where you need to go with seeking support for your child, and how managing those meltdowns can take a totally different turn if you're not addressing them effectively. Your child can create or can grow their sense of shame and feeling like they're not alone. Kim says, my child has issues lately with worries about getting cancer. So I'm wondering if you're asking a question or just commenting, Kim, because I could go so many different ways with that statement. I don't want to assume what it is that you need support with, but I am here. I have a couple more minutes to answer any questions related to that statement. So I think I understand what you're getting at, Kim. Says, again, wondering if this is sufficient. Being highly sensitive would lead to a specific worry. So highly sensitive kids, when they learn new information, process that information very deeply. And so they might make connections and wonderings about whether or not certain scary things might happen to them, or why scary things happen in the first place, or how frequently scary things happen, as well as a whole host of other worries and wonderings that go through their mind and their imagination on a regular basis. And if your child's specific worry or frequent worries are getting in the way of their ability to go to school on time, manage particular routines, if you feel ill-equipped to help them manage those routines and walk them through their responsibilities as a child, and the kid's first responsibility is play, Second is to learn. And third is to go to school. Third is to be a productive member of society. And fourth is to go to school, which kind of goes hand in hand. But if the challenges your child is having, whether it plays out in meltdowns or it plays out in worries that paralyze them, then that's the time to seek support. So anxious kids can have worries about specific events or just all sorts of anxious things. All sorts of things. And that's the difference between a diagnosis called generalized anxiety or specific phobia. So if your child is like specifically deathly afraid of snakes, for example, and then that's getting in the way of any sort of ability to manage their daily routine, then that would be something to reach out for support with. So like I said before, I can't diagnose your child over the internet, but I can provide you with indications of when professional support would be a good idea to seek out support. And that's if any of your child's significant behaviors is getting in the way of them doing their regular responsibilities for a child. I hope that helps answer the question, Kim. All right. A couple more of you who are watching, say hi. I don't know if you have more questions, but feel free to reach out. I'll put the link below for our free consult if you're wondering if I could support you more directly in managing your child's meltdowns or point you in the right direction and what would be more effective at managing those meltdowns to decrease them or especially eliminate daily meltdowns. And kind of, like I said before, I went on and on. Oh, you're welcome, Kim. So I think that's about it for me today. Got a couple other things to get done on my agenda before the day ends, so I'm going to sign off. Thanks. Have a good day.